Hello everyone, and welcome to the third installment of making molds for Kydex using thermoplastic molding, and this also works for leather or other types of devices. As always, before we start, we're going to show you the tools that we've been working with in order to make this step happen. We've got a regular screw gun. In this case, we're using it as a drill. We also use our drill press. We're going to be using some regular epoxy, very economical and disposable when we're done. And there's just a regular marker and a couple of stir sticks on a plate for mixing that epoxy. The marker we use, because we mount each of our molds onto what we refer to as molding plates. In this case, we've taken a 1911. This is the positive mold that you've seen earlier. We've actually cut off the handle because the handle is not required for this step of the manufacturing process. But of course, we still have the negative mold in case we ever want to reproduce the gun or use it for any kind of testing in the future. So we basically traced out the pattern using that marker onto this plate. We're later on, and you're going to see this in the video, going to be attaching the sight line here to the gun, and we encourage you all to use the smallest or the same sized sight line as the gun itself that you're working from. In this case, we're working with a piece of Kydex, and the 1911 has a pretty narrow front sight. So rather than using a large piece, we're going to keep it as small as possible because that'll help the gun line up and add extra horizontal stability later on. Here, we're showing 3 little cubes. We've cut up a 1/2 inch board. Any type of 1/2 inch board will do it, and we do this because we like to raise up our molding devices here in order for the Kydex to wrap around all the sides of the gun. This is what we refer to as a modified pancake. A pancake would be just directly on top. The one we're doing is actually going to wrap around it a little bit. It's kind of a sandwiching pancake. The same thing is for the SIG here, and we've got that lined up with 3 pieces as well. And we'll show you how those mount up in the next part of the video. Next, we've got our 2 mags that you've seen in the first 2 videos, and 2 little things here. Those are going to be mounted just as such, floating as well so they can wrap around, and the 4th one as well. So we're ready to go ahead. The next step we're going to do is drill the holes in the inside area because that's where we want our suction to be coming from for our molding on the thermoplastic molding, which we're going to be doing in just a few minutes. And previous to that, we're going to get this all stuck together using the epoxy, and we're going to use that drill gun to get the plates holed up, and we'll be happy to show you the results very shortly. Hello everyone, and we're on to the second part of this video, and as you can see now we've got all 4 of our project pieces mounted, starting with a SIG 226 on the left, the 1911 beside it, and then our 2 mags for each of those devices beside it. Now, before going forward, I'd like to add that we did use a couple of tools for this the step we just completed that we did not emphasize earlier. One of the things we use is just a pair of clippers and a popsicle stick as the spacer. So the clippers are used to chop the popsicle stick, which was required for the reinforcement under one of these guys. And the other thing is the level. Now the level's extremely important for this step of the process because it ensures that we're putting all the things on equally, which is going to later on become very important in order to get the Kydex wrapped around under the molds, as well as to make sure that there's equal spacing so that all the holsters end up looking equal, and of course professionally done later on. I'm just going to ask my partner Zach here to take that level, and we're going to put it on the 1911 just to take a look at that and make sure that the bubble is, of course, as much as possible in the center. Sorry if that doesn't show up too well. It's a little bit left of center, but quite frankly, our floor is not 100% level, and there's always little inconsistency. So we're very thrilled with that, and that same results occurred over all the pieces. Now, I'm going to ask Zach again to lift up the 1911 as our piece we're showing you here and show you the holes through from the back side. Now, these are really important because what these are for is for the air to flow through the actual plate. And when we move on to the actual vacuum process later on, you're going to see how these holes allow the air to flow through and control where our airflow is coming from. If we were to put the holes on the sides as opposed to in the middle, our suction would go to the outside versus the inside. And in our case here, where we want the Kydex to wrap around the gun down to the sides, it's very important that we have our airflow into those directions, pulling the actual Kydex we're going to put on top, and the material will wrap around to the bottom. So that's the end of this part of the video, and look forward to showing you the next steps. Welcome to the third and final section of our third video. We have now reached the point where we are heating up some Kydex in our oven, and we are looking at our vacuum press table. Everything that you see here that we're going to be using, we have made, and quite a few things I think we may have invented. If you see anything you like or don't like, feel free to throw us a comment. We'd love to know how to do things better. So, as always, the first thing we'd like to show you is some of the tools that we use, and then we're going to get on to discussing the actual vacuum table itself. Of course, Kydex comes out of our oven at about 325 degrees. We like to use this pair of leather welding mitts over here. They're pretty economical, and they still provide good movement and allow us to do our work when the Kydex is hot. Back here we have a couple of Kydex silicone sheets. These silicone sheets we put on top of the Kydex, which is on top of the mold, before we use the vacuum process. We're certainly going to be showing you that in just a moment. Over here, we've got the finished plate that we were showing you before. We're looking at the SIG 226 model, which we've seen go from a blue gun into the negative mold and back into a positive mold. That positive mold has now been cut and is mounted on top of one of our 8x8 plates. That's 8 inches by 8 inches. And right next to that, we have two pencils. These pencils we like to use, or a piece of doweling or anything of a similar size, to help get the tuck under the bottom of our mold. Now, lastly, and probably of a lot of interest, is our vacuum table itself. This is powered by 12 horsepower of 2 shop vacs coming into here. It's a great system because depending on the amount of suction that we'd like to be using, we can turn on 1 shop vac, we can turn on 2 shop vacs, or any combination just to make it whatever we want to have the effect of. Now, why we were mounting stuff on plates earlier and in the last section of the video, in the second section there, is because we like to have a permanently mountable but interchangeable system that makes things very easy. By having this table here, as you can see, it's 8 inches by 8 inches, and it's got an awful lot of holes drilled into it. Now, you could be looking at this and thinking, well, the air is all going to escape, and you could be right. How this is going to work is, first of all, the entire table is sealed off using this red tape. The red tape does a really good job. It's a weatherproofing tape, so it actually keeps things very nice and tight. There's no air escaping anywhere on these things. Then we've got some weather stripping. I'm going to bring the phone down here so you can see a little bit better. It actually raises things up a little bit. By doing that, when we put our plate on top, as I'm about to show you, it actually creates a space chamber between this and the plate, which allows the air to compact and provides the suction drawing down the air from our plate. Now watch as I just quickly put on the plate here, and our table is instantly ready to go for use with the SIG 226. Now imagine while we're doing our mold, we could easily change this into a 1911. I'm just going to put the SIG 226 back there as an example, and that's how easy our table is to change the molds. There's absolutely no setup required. It's just drop one square onto another square and you're ready to go. Alrighty, so the next thing we're going to be showing you is the Kydex coming out of the oven and getting sucked onto this, and hopefully it's going to go perfectly the first time for us. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, thanks for staying with us as we reach the last part of this video where we're going to be taking the Kydex out of the oven and putting it onto our vacuum press. Here we go, and we're just going to take the Kydex out of the oven and we're going to be draping it on top of the mold with the gritty side up. Making sure to place it very carefully on top there. It's the most important part of the process. We need our flanges, we need everything to do that. So we're going to do a very quick hand press. Then we're going to take our silicone sheet, put that on top. And it's going to be noisy here in a moment, so the last thing we're going to see is the actual molding part, and then the pencils we're going to use to press it in on the sides. Here we go. Okay, there we have it. The main vacuum part's been completed. Now we're just going to lift the silicone sheets up, see what it looks like, while still leaving the actual mold and the Kydex on the mold itself in order to let it cool down. If we were to take it off right now before the Kydex cools down, there's a good chance the Kydex is going to warp in a shape that's not consistent with the actual mold. So just letting it cool down there, and because it's bigger at the top end than it is the bottom end, when it comes the time, we're just going to slide it off towards the narrow end and take a look. Okay, we've waited a minute or two now until the Kydex has cooled down, and we're going to see my partner Zach's hands as he's going to take the Kydex off. Now this is just a rough go for us to see the molds work before we use a good copy. So there we go, Zach just popped it off. Things look like they're holding pretty well, and he's just grabbing the blue gun that we started off from in the first video. It's putting inside the mold, or the holster. And there it is. And that looks like a real solid grip, in and out, showing it upside down. Fantastic. So that looks like a good quality product from start to finish. Now we're going to go through this again and do the mold one more time with a good piece of Kydex, and that's where you're going to meet us in the next video, where we're going to show the finishing of the Kydex. Zach, let's just finish this video by putting that blue gun in there and showing it hanging upside down out of that mold for the third part of our video series. There we go, looking good.